So I've always been curious if the box underneath the factory intake that goes all the way down, hidden into the front bumper here, is a feed for cold air, or if it's just a closed like resonator box to reduce intake noise. First thing we gotta do is remove this upper section, take this rubber gasket off that feeds the cold air into the inlet here with these two 10mm heads here. There's like a little nipple that goes inside this slot here. 10mm down there, 10mm down there, and this 10 up front. I think it's just 3 bolts. Undo your clamp right here, undo the connector for your mass airflow, pop this clip off, and this whole thing should come straight up. So here's a look at the factory intake components. This is the top part of the intake. There's your mass airflow sensor in that hole. One thing I did notice is, I haven't really messed with this yet at all, and the factory torque on this hose clamp kind of made this intake here a little bit odd-round. So that's just a small detail I noticed. But this is the lower section. So I made a video a while ago saying that one of the things I like about this car a lot is how simple the intake design is, and I was actually a little bit wrong with that statement because it's actually a lot more complicated than I thought. So this is the inlet on the front of the hood here that cold air is rammed into the box, and without popping the air filter off at the beginning when I bought the car, I thought, oh, it must just feed straight in. That's not the case though. So if you take a look, this box is pretty much fully closed in with a small hole down here for the full inlet to this area underneath the air filter. Flipping the box upside down, you have 2 holes here. One side feeds the air from the car in, and then you can see straight through this side is to the air filter. However, that is just kind of a giant wraparound design. I'm gonna find out if these 2 additional holes in the bottom is pulling cold air from underneath the bumper area, or if it's just a resonator box. Because if it is just a resonator box, my theory is that you'll be able to plug these off right here and get some more intake noise and make it sound a little better. When you do pull up, it's a little bit hard. You take those 3 bolts out I mentioned, 10mm head there, 1 down there, and 1 right here. Those are the factory 3-point brackets. Then you got to pull up pretty hard on this because there's a couple rubber seals. But if you are going to put this back together, you do want to pull these rubber seals off because they have a lip on them that is intended to mate in here. And if you just push this straight down on top of these again, you're not going to get it to seat inside that lip right there. So first thing to do, pull those off before the reinstall. So taking a look down underneath the car here, it opens up a lot of space when you get that intake out. You see your clutch line. But the question is this intake box, you got the inlet and outlet port here, is it just a resonator for noise, or is there more to it than that? Go ahead and try to pressurize this area and see if it exhausts out or if it builds pressure. If it exhausts out without taking out the front bumper, we'll know that there is a inlet for more airflow where we can't see underneath the bumper. What I got here is a closed cell foam block with a hole cut in it. I'm gonna pressurize this side and see if I can pop the tape off with the pressure on that side. If it doesn't move at all, that means it's exhausting out the front. If it does move, that means this is a sealed chamber just for noise reduction. Hey guys, so the tape moved. That just proves that this is a sealed box, and all the comments online from people saying that this is a secondary inlet for cold air to the intake, that's a complete lie. This is just a baffle for noise reduction. In addition to the box down below, there's also this little hole you notice here. This is on the filter side. The air is coming out of this hole, pulling it into the intake, and there's a little hole over here. And that hole, this is looking at the back side now, is the square little inlet here to this closed box right here. And that does absolutely nothing either but reduce sound. It's going to be kind of complicated to make a plug for that 3D contoured square profile inside there. So what I think I'll just do is put a piece of Gorilla Tape over it and call it a day, and make some plugs for the resonator box down below so that it is plugged, and when I plug this back in, the seals still seal. Alright, so as far as this section, that's really the only mod. Put some tape over that hole, some Gorilla Tape just like that, couple layers thick to block it off. So I've 3D printed a cap to go in each one of those holes. To install, I'm going to smear a little bit of black silicone around this stepped edge here. Pop it in the hole and clean it up with a paper towel. All right, so now you're ready to put the lower intake box back on. Just a tip, I took a little silicone spray on my finger and went around the inside of this gasket. Don't forget to seat this gasket into the bottom of the lower intake part filter housing here. And that's just gonna make it, when you push it over those plastic ridges, make it slide on a lot easier so you're not fighting anything. Drops down nicely. Now you can put your 3 bolts back in to secure the lower part of the intake here. I suggest using a long magnet for the ones down there so you don't drop the bolts. Last one up here. You can take your rubber air inlet guide here and pop it back on the front part. Your OEM air filter back in. And the last step here is going to be to reconnect your upper air filter housing with the mass airflow sensor back into the top here. 2 clips, that's all it takes to lock the air filter in. Plug your mass airflow sensor back in. Good to go. And all you have to do now is tighten the clamp. This is a 5.5 millimeter hex for this clamp. Don't use the Phillips head screwdriver because you're probably going to strip it out. So seeing how that was deformed before, I'm just going to go hand tight on this one and give it a little bit of an extra turn with a 1/4-inch ratchet here. So this clamp does bottom out on itself. You don't keep cranking to infinity and keep collapsing it. It does have a stop, so no need to be too critical on the torque there. But yeah, everything's back together now. Let's go take it for a drive and see if there's any noticeable difference in sound. I'm gonna be honest, I did not expect this mod to make this big of a difference in the induction noise, but check it out. Right around 3,500, the intake, the factory intake now sounds like you have an aftermarket intake on the car. The induction noise is so much louder. This video is actually shot about 4 weeks after I filmed the first part of the video, so I've been driving around with the car like this for almost a month now. I really got to say, it has made it so much more enjoyable just to hear the induction noise and hear the engine more than the factory setup on this car. I've had no problems with blocking off the resonator. Sounds really, really good. At the very high RPMs, the sound kind of goes away and you hear more engine noise versus the induction noise. It doesn't make that VTEC crack like it would in an 8th gen SI when you had the true VTEC on the intake and exhaust cam, but for just adding 2 plugs and taping that inlet shut in the airbox, I'd say it's definitely worth it. So I know the audio in this video probably isn't doing it justice, but take my word for it that it is a lot louder than the factory setup, and with this minimal change you can keep the factory air filter. If you're coming from like an 8th gen SI though, where you had that amazing induction noise with the aluminum intake manifold and the high flow head and the K20Z3, you're gonna be pretty let down with that induction noise that I just showed you. But coming from where this car was stocked to now for almost a free mod, as always guys, modify your cars at your own risk. Personally, I can say I have not had any issues at all since doing this mod to the car. If you guys are interested in purchasing those 2 plugs to block off the resonator, please leave a comment below. I'm kind of gauging interest to see if it'd be worth it for me to start 3D printing them and selling them. If I do decide to start selling them, I'll leave a pinned comment on this video, and I'll also put the rates builds link in the video description here to link the product to where to buy those plugs. But like I said, leave a comment below if you are interested. I'll try to make them really, really cheap. I will be doing a comparison I'm going to be installing a PRL high volume intake on this car very shortly, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel. But I'll also give my thoughts on how loud that makes the induction noise versus this intake resonator delete on the OEM K20C2 intake. Thanks for watching, guys. Give the video a thumbs up. If you do end up modifying your OEM intake, let me know how it works out for you. Let me know how you think it sounds, and I'll see you guys in the next one.